The signal came on a Tuesday. Dr. Amelia Chen stared at her monitor in disbelief, her coffee going cold beside her keyboard. The rhythmic pulses from deep space were unlike anything she'd ever seen before. They were too precise, too intentional to be natural. "Holy shit," she whispered, her fingers flying across the keys as she ran algorithm after algorithm to confirm what she already knew in her gut. We're not alone. Within hours, the news had spread from HSETI to every major space agency and government on the planet. Within days, it was public knowledge. Humanity held its collective breath, united for once in anticipation of what might come next. They didn't have to wait long. The Valaxian ships appeared in the sky 3 weeks later, massive structures that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. They hovered silently over major cities, their sleek, silvery hulls reflecting the sun in mesmerizing patterns. First contact was peaceful, almost anticlimactic. The Valaxians, tall, ethereal beings with iridescent skin and eyes that seemed to hold galaxies, spoke of friendship and cultural exchange. They'd promised to share their advanced technology, to help solve Earth's most pressing problems. For 2 months, the world celebrated. Scientists collaborated with Valaxian experts, politicians posed for photo ops with alien diplomats, and children dreamed of visiting the stars. Then, on a warm summer evening, everything changed. The attack came without warning. Valaxian ships opened fire on cities worldwide, their energy weapons carving swaths of destruction through concrete and steel. Military bases were the first to fall, precision strikes eliminating humanity's ability to mount an effective defense. In Washington, D.C., Major Jack Harper watched in horror as the Pentagon crumbled, engulfed in otherworldly flames. "This can't be happening," he muttered, ducking behind an overturned car as debris rained down around him. Across the Atlantic in London, Dr. Elena Reeves ran through the chaos-filled streets, her lab coat flapping behind her. The quantum physics research she'd been working on with the Valaxians now felt like a cruel joke. "We handed them everything," she panted, dodging a falling lamppost. "Our science, our weaknesses, everything." Humanity's military response was swift but futile. Fighter jets were swatted from the sky like flies, their missiles harmlessly absorbed by Valaxian energy shields. Tanks and artillery fared no better, their shells doing little more than scratching the alien vessel's paintwork. As the first day of the invasion turned to night, the harsh reality settled in. Earth's mightiest weapons were toys compared to Valaxian technology. The aliens had played them, gaining their trust only to strike when humanity was at its most vulnerable. Underground bunkers, relics of the Cold War, were hastily reopened. Governments relocated, dragging with them whatever research and technology they could salvage. The surface became a battleground, with pockets of human resistance fighting a desperate, losing war against the alien invaders. In the depths of Cheyenne Mountain, what remained of the United States government gathered to assess the situation. The mood was grim, the weight of impending doom palpable in the recycled air. "What's the status of our nuclear arsenal?" General Harriet Cho asked, her uniform dusty and torn from her narrow escape from Washington. A young lieutenant swallowed hard before responding. "Ma'am, we launched everything we had. ICBMs, submarine-launched, everything. The Valaxians intercepted them all before they even reached the upper atmosphere. Our nukes are ineffective." The room fell silent, the enormity of their situation sinking in. Humanity's ultimate weapons, the deterrent that had kept an uneasy peace for decades, were useless against this new threat. "So that's it then?" someone asked, their voice cracking. "We've lost." "No," the voice came from the back of the room. All heads turned to see Dr. Elena Reeves, her clothes singed and dirty, but her eyes blazing with determination. "We haven't lost yet. I have an idea, but you're going to think I'm crazy." Major Jack Harper, who had managed to escort a group of civilians to safety before making his way to the bunker, stepped forward. "Doc, at this point, I think we're all open to a little crazy." Elena took a deep breath. Before the invasion, I was working on something with the Valaxians, quantum entanglement technology. They were interested in it for communication, but I think we might be able to weaponize it." General Cho leaned forward, intrigued despite her skepticism. "Weaponize it how?" "The Valaxians' energy shields operate on a principle similar to quantum fields. If we can create a weapon that utilizes entangled particles, we might be able to bypass their defenses entirely, hit them where they're vulnerable." The room buzzed with a mixture of hope and disbelief. It sounded impossible, like science fiction. But then again, so would the idea of an alien invasion have seemed just days ago. "What do you need?" General Cho asked, a spark of hope igniting in her eyes. Elena straightened her back, suddenly aware of the weight of expectation on her shoulders. "A lab, equipment, and every physicist and engineer you can find who's still alive. We're going to have to reinvent warfare, and we need to do it fast." As the bunker erupted into action, Major Harper approached Elena. "You really think this can work, Doc?" She met his gaze, uncertainty warring with determination in her eyes. "It has to, Major, because if it doesn't, we've already lost." Outside, the world burned. Valaxian ships continued their relentless assault, methodically destroying human civilization. But deep underground, a spark of hope had been lit. Humanity, with its back against the wall, was about to remind the universe of an important lesson. Never underestimate a species fighting for its survival. The quantum gambit had begun. The quantum discovery. The underground lab hummed with nervous energy. 3 months had passed since the Valaxian invasion began, and the surface world was a wasteland of alien occupation and human desperation. But here, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a glimmer of hope flickered to life. Dr. Elena Reeves stood before a whiteboard covered in complex equations, her hair wild and unkempt, dark circles under her eyes betraying countless sleepless nights. She stepped back, studying the formula that could be humanity's salvation or its final disappointment. "I think we've got it," she murmured, more to herself than to the team of haggard scientists and engineers surrounding her. Major Jack Harper, now liaison between the military and the science team, raised an eyebrow. "You said that last week, Doc. And the week before." Elena shot him a weary smile. "This time it's different. We've solved the entanglement stability issue. In theory, we should be able to create a quantum field that can penetrate the Valaxian shields." Before Jack could respond, alarms blared through the facility. Red emergency lights bathed the lab in an eerie glow. "Perimeter breach," a voice shouted over the intercom. "All personnel to designated safe zones." This is not a drill. Jack's military training kicked in. "Everyone, move. Now," he barked, ushering the scientists toward the blast doors. Elena hesitated, looking back at her work. Jack grabbed her arm. "Whatever you need, grab it fast. We're leaving." She nodded, quickly downloading data onto a portable drive and snatching up a small device from her workbench. As they rushed out, the sounds of combat echoed through the corridors, energy weapons, and the staccato of gunfire. "The Valaxians found us," Elena panted as they ran. "How? We were so careful." Jack's face was grim. "Doesn't matter now. We need to get you and that research out of here." They rounded a corner and came face to face with a Valaxian scout team. The aliens were even more terrifying up close, their iridescent skin rippling with patterns of light, eyes glowing with an otherworldly intelligence. Time seemed to slow. Jack raised his rifle, knowing it would be useless against the aliens' personal shields. Elena, acting on instinct, activated the device in her hand. A pulse of energy, invisible but palpable, emanated from the small quantum prototype. The Valaxians stumbled, their shields flickering and failing. Jack didn't hesitate. His bullets found their mark, and the aliens fell. For a moment, they stood in shocked silence. "It worked," Elena whispered, staring at the device in her hand. "Jack, it actually worked." He nodded, his mind racing with the implications. "We need to get this to command." Now, they fought their way through the complex, the prototype quantum device providing them a crucial advantage. When they finally reached the emergency bunker, where General Cho and the remaining leadership had gathered, the weight of what they'd accomplished hit them. "Report," General Cho demanded as they entered. Jack stepped forward. "Ma'am, Dr. Reeves' quantum weapon works. We've got a chance." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. With proof that the quantum technology could penetrate Valaxian defenses, every available resource was poured into the project. Hidden factories were reproposed, and a global network of resistance cells worked tirelessly to manufacture the new weapons. Elena found herself at the center of it all, refining the design, increasing its power and range. The prototype was reverse-engineered into various forms: handheld weapons, vehicle-mounted cannons, even rudimentary missiles. As the production ramped up, so did the hope. For the first time since the invasion, humanity had a fighting chance. But the Valaxians weren't idle. Reports from resistance spotters indicated increased activity around their main bases. Something big was coming. In a strategy room carved out of solid rock, General Cho addressed the assembled leaders of the human resistance. "Intel suggests the Valaxians are aware of our new weapons. They're adapting, fortifying their positions. We need to strike now, before they find a way to counter our advantage." Elena spoke up, her voice carrying the weight of their future. "The quantum weapons are ready, but we haven't had time for extensive testing. There's still so much we don't know about their full capabilities or potential side effects." Jack, standing beside her, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes, Doc, you've got to roll the dice. We might not get another shot at this." General Cho nodded. "Agreed. We're calling it Operation Firefly, the coordinated global assault on key Valaxian strongholds. Dr. Reeves, your team will provide tactical support, helping our forces maximize the effectiveness of the quantum weapons." As the meeting adjourned and plans were set in motion, Elena found herself alone with Jack in a quiet corridor. "Are we really ready for this?" she asked, the doubt she'd been holding back finally surfacing. Jack looked at her, his eyes reflecting the same mix of fear and determination she felt. "Ready or not, this is our moment. You've given us a chance, Elena. Now it's up to us to make it count." She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Then let's make it count." As they walked toward the command center to begin final preparations, alarms suddenly blared to life. Emergency lights flashed, and the facility shook with the impact of distant explosions. A frantic voice came over the intercom. "Multiple Valaxian ships approaching. They found us." Jack and Elena exchanged a look of grim understanding. The Valaxians weren't waiting for humanity to make the first move. The final battle was beginning, ready or not. "Looks like Operation Firefly is starting early," Jack said, checking his weapon. Elena clutched her tablet, containing all the data on the quantum weapons. "Then let's give them a light show they'll never forget." As they raced to join the defense, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The quantum gambit was about to be put to the ultimate test, and the future of Earth would be decided in the crucible of war. The battle for Earth's liberation had begun. Operation Firefly. The sky burned crimson as dawn broke over the ruins of what was once Denver. Valaxian ships loomed overhead, their hulls gleaming ominously in the early light. But today, something was different. Today, humanity fought back. Major Jack Harper crouched behind the twisted wreckage of an overturned bus, his newly equipped quantum rifle humming with potential energy. Beside him, Dr. Elena Reeves made last-minute adjustments to a portable quantum field generator. "You sure this thing won't fry us along with the Valaxians?" Jack asked, eyeing the device warily. Elena managed a tense smile. "About 85% sure. But given the alternative." "Yeah, I'll take those odds." Jack nodded. He activated his comlink. "All units, this is Major Harper. Commence Operation Firefly. Light 'em up." Across the globe, at that very moment, similar scenes were unfolding. In the scorched fields outside Paris, the crumbling streets of Tokyo, the dusty outskirts of Cairo, humanity launched its desperate counterattack. The element of surprise proved devastatingly effective. Valaxian troops, accustomed to the impotence of human weapons, found themselves suddenly vulnerable. Their shields, once impenetrable, flickered and failed against the onslaught of quantum-based artillery. In Denver, Jack led the charge. "Push forward," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of battle. Energy beams crisscrossed the air as Valaxian defenders returned fire, but for the first time, they seemed uncertain, disorganized. Alina moved with the frontline troops, monitoring the performance of the quantum weapons. "The field is holding," she called out. "Their shields are down." A cheer went up from the human fighters. Emboldened, they pressed their advantage, driving deeper into Valaxian-held territory. But the aliens were quick to adapt. As the initial shock wore off, they began to regroup, employing new tactics to counter the quantum threat. Valaxian commanders, recognizing the danger of the new human weapons, ordered their forces to engage at extreme range, beyond the effective radius of the quantum fields. In London, General Cho received real-time updates from battlefields around the world. "They're pulling back," she observed, studying the tactical displays, "trying to negate our advantage." "Then we push harder," her XO suggested. Cho shook her head. "No, we can't overextend. Order all forces to secure and hold their gains. We've bloodied their nose. Now we dig in and prepare for their counterattack." As the first day of Operation Firefly drew to a close, a tense stalemate settled over the planet. Humanity had reclaimed significant territory, but the Valaxians still held vast swaths of Earth under their control. In the Denver command post, Jack found Alina poring over combat data. "Hell of a day," he said, collapsing into a chair beside her. She nodded, her eyes never leaving the screens. "The weapons performed better than I could have hoped. But the Valaxians, they're learning, adapting. We need to stay ahead of them." Jack leaned in, studying the figures. "What's our next move?" Before Elena could answer, an alarm blared. A junior officer burst into the room. "Sir, ma'am, we're picking up massive energy signatures. Multiple Valaxian ships decloaking in low orbit." They rushed to the command center, arriving just in time to see the main view screen light up with dozens of new contacts. The Valaxian reinforcements had arrived. "Dan," Jack muttered, "looks like the real fight is just beginning." Over the next weeks, the war entered a new phase. The initial human victories had shaken Valaxian confidence, but with fresh troops and supplies, they began a methodical campaign to reclaim lost ground. The quantum weapons remained effective, but their limitations became apparent. Power consumption was enormous, and maintaining the fields over large areas proved challenging. Human forces found themselves fighting desperate holding actions, giving ground grudgingly, but unable to stem the alien tide completely. In a secure bunker beneath the ruins of Berlin, Dr. Elena Reeves convened an emergency meeting of Earth's top scientists. Holographic projections flickered to life, showing haggard faces from hidden labs around the world. "We need solutions," Elena stated bluntly. "The quantum tech got us this far, but it's not enough. We need a game changer." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, speaking from a submarine beneath the Pacific, leaned forward. "I might have something. We've been analyzing Valaxian communication patterns. There's a vulnerability in their quantum entanglement network. If we could disrupt it, we could throw their entire command structure into chaos." Elena finished, excitement building in her voice. For the next 72 hours, the scientists worked feverishly, fueled by caffeine and desperation. When they emerged, they had the blueprints for a device that could potentially turn the tide of the war. As Elena prepared to present their findings to military command, Jack pulled her aside. "Elena, I just wanted to say." He struggled to find the words. She met his gaze, understanding passing between them. So much unspoken in the midst of war. "I know, Jack. Me too. Their moment was interrupted by the thunderous impact of Valaxian weapons fire. The ground shook, dust raining from the ceiling. "Looks like our time's up," Jack said grimly, checking his weapon. Elena clutched the data tablet containing their latest breakthrough. "Then let's make sure this wasn't all for nothing." As they raced towards the command center, alarms blaring around them, both knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of humanity. The Valaxians were closing in, but Earth had one last card to play. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Humanity's last, desperate gambit was their only hope for survival. The Valaxian countermove. The air crackled with tension in the underground war room. Dr. Elena Reeves stood before a group of haggard military leaders, her presentation on the new quantum communication disruptor drawing to a close. "If this works," General Cho said, leaning forward, "we could cripple their entire command structure." Elena nodded, trying to keep the exhaustion from her voice. "That's the idea." "We." Her words were cut short as the room plunged into darkness. For a moment, there was only confusion. Then, one by one, emergency lights flickered to life, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Major Jack Harper burst into the room, his face grim. "It's not just us. Reports are coming in from all over." Every powered device on the planet just went dark. The realization hit Elena like a physical blow. "An EMP," she whispered, "but on a global scale. How is that even possible?" The answer came moments later as they gathered around a battery-powered radio. The Valaxians had deployed a network of high-altitude EMP devices, simultaneously detonating them in a coordinated strike that covered the entire planet. In one fell swoop, the aliens had leveled the playing field. Humanity's quantum weapons, along with nearly all of their advanced technology, were now useless. The next few days were chaos. Without power or modern communications, coordinating any kind of response was nearly impossible. Valaxian ground forces, seemingly unaffected by the EMP, began to push forward, reclaiming territory with ease. In what was left of Chicago, Jack and Elena found themselves part of a ragtag group of soldiers and civilians, fighting a desperate retreat. "We can't keep this up," Jack said, ducking behind a crumbling wall as energy bolts sizzled overhead. "We're outgunned, outmanned, and running out of options." Elena's mind raced, trying to find a solution. Her eyes fell on a group of children huddled nearby. Fear etched on their young faces. Something clicked. "Jack," she said, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice, "I have an idea. But you're going to think I'm crazy." He managed a wry smile. "Crazy is all we got left, Doc. What's the plan?" Elena outlined her idea quickly. Without modern technology, they needed to go old school. Really old school. Over the next weeks, as Valaxian forces tightened their grip on major population centers, a new kind of resistance began to take shape. Using techniques that would have been familiar to revolutionaries centuries ago, humans began to organize. Bicycle couriers carried messages between hidden enclaves. Morse code tapped out on makeshift telegraph lines became a lifeline of communication. Low-tech weapons, crossbows, catapults, even Greek fire, were manufactured in secret. Elena found herself at the heart of this new primitive resistance. Her scientific knowledge, combined with historical records of pre-industrial warfare, proved invaluable. In a hidden workshop, she stood before a group of engineers and craftsmen. "The Valaxians rely on their advanced tech," she explained. "They've never had to face an enemy fighting with these kinds of weapons. We can use that to our advantage." Jack, who had become her constant companion in these dark days, nodded in agreement. "Hit-and-run tactics. Ambushes. We make them fight on our terms." As the resistance grew, so did hope. Small victories began to accumulate. A Valaxian patrol taken out by a concealed pit trap, an alien command post disrupted by a coordinated arrow barrage. Slowly but surely, humanity began to push back. But Elena knew these tactics alone wouldn't win the war. They needed to reactivate their quantum technology. In a candlelit room deep beneath the ruins of MIT, Alina met with a group of scientists and engineers. "We need to build a Faraday cage," she explained, "large enough to house a lab. If we can shield our equipment from the lingering EMP effects, we might be able to get the quantum tech back online." The project was daunting. Scavenging the necessary materials while avoiding Valaxian patrols was a constant challenge. But bit by bit, the shielded lab took shape. Weeks turned to months. The guerrilla war raged on, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. But in their hidden lab, Alina and her team worked tirelessly. Finally, after countless setbacks and near disasters, they were ready. Alina stood before the jury-rigged quantum device, her heart pounding. "Here goes nothing," she muttered, and flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hum that seemed to vibrate through her very bones, the machine came to life. "It works," she breathed, scarcely able to believe it. "It actually works." Jack, who had been standing guard, rushed to her side. "You did it, Alina. You've given us a chance." She shook her head, grasping his hand. "We did it. All of us. Now comes the hard part." Over the next days, plans were set in motion. Using their low-tech communication network, the Resistance began to coordinate a global offensive. The quantum communication disruptor, shielded and modified, was primed and ready. As the pieces fell into place, Alina found a quiet moment with Jack. The weight of what was to come hung heavy between them. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we either take back our planet or nothing," Jack finished. "Because if we fail, there's no coming back from this." Alina nodded, then surprised herself by pulling Jack into a fierce embrace. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "I'm glad you've been here through all of this." He held her tight, words unnecessary. As dawn broke on what would be the most important day in human history, resistance fighters around the world prepared for battle. In hidden bases, in mountain hideouts, in the shadows of ruined cities, they readied themselves for one final push. The plan was audacious, borderline insane, but it was all they had left. Strike at the heart of the Valaxian command, disrupt their communications, and in the ensuing chaos, take back the planet. Alina took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The fate of humanity rested on what would happen in the next few hours. It was time to end this war, one way or another. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The final stand. The pre-dawn air was thick with tension as resistance fighters across the globe prepared for what could be humanity's last stand. In a makeshift command center beneath the ruins of London, Dr. Alina Reeves made final adjustments to the quantum communication disruptor. "Status report," General Cho's voice crackled over a jury-rigged radio. "Disruptor is primed and ready," Alina responded, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Waiting on your go." Major Jack Harper, geared up for battle, gave Alina's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "This is it, Doc. No pressure, but the fate of our species is riding on that little device of yours." Alina managed a wry smile. "Just another day at the office, right?" Their banter was interrupted by General Cho's command. "All units, Operation Phoenix is a go. I repeat, Operation Phoenix is a go." With a deep breath, Alina activated the disruptor. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, reports began flooding in from around the world. Valaxian ships are losing altitude over New York, enemy ground forces in disarray in Beijing. Their weapons are malfunctioning in Sao Paulo. A cheer went up in the command center. The disruptor had worked, throwing the entire Valaxian command structure into chaos. "That's our cue," Jack said, hefting his weapon. "Time to take the fight to them." Across the planet, humanity launched its counterattack. It was a bizarre sight. Soldiers wielding a mix of jury-rigged energy weapons and medieval-style arms, charging against the technologically superior but suddenly vulnerable Valaxians. In London, Jack led a team towards the Valaxian Central Command ship that hovered over the ruins of Parliament. Elena, against Jack's protests, insisted on coming along to maintain the disruptor. "I'm the only one who can recalibrate it if something goes wrong," she argued. "You need me out there." The battle was fierce. Valaxian troops, their coordination shattered by the destruction of their quantum network, fought with desperate ferocity. But humanity, with nothing left to lose, pushed forward with equal determination. As they neared the Valaxian ship, a massive energy bolt lanced out, nearly vaporizing their squad. "They're adapting," Elena shouted over the din of battle. "The disruptor won't hold them for long." Jack nodded grimly. "Then we end this now. Cover me." With a primal yell, he charged forward, dodging energy bolts and leaping over debris. Elena and the rest of the squad provided covering fire, their makeshift weapons surprisingly effective against the confused aliens. Jack reached the ship's entry ramp, fighting his way inside. Elena's heart raced as she lost sight of him, the minutes ticking by agonizingly slow. Suddenly, the ship's engines roared to life. "No," Elena cried, fearing the worst. But instead of rising, the massive vessel began to tilt, its nose dipping towards the ground. "All units, clear the area." Jack's voice came over the comm. "This bird's coming down." Elena and the others scrambled for cover as the Valaxian command ship crashed into the Thames, the impact sending shockwaves through the city. As the dust settled, a figure emerged from the wreckage. Jack, battered but alive, clutching a Valaxian data core. "I think," he said with a weary grin, "we just won the war." The next hours were a blur of activity. With their command structure in shambles and their main ship destroyed, Valaxian forces around the world began to surrender or retreat. Humanity, scared but unbroken, had reclaimed their planet. In the aftermath, Elena found herself working alongside Valaxian scientists who had chosen to defect rather than retreat. The quantum technology that had nearly destroyed humanity now promised to usher in a new era of progress and interstellar understanding. Months later, as the first green shoots began to appear in the scared earth of London, Elena stood with Jack on a hill overlooking the city's reconstruction. "So, Dr. Reeves," Jack said, a teasing lilt in his voice, "what's next on the agenda? Curing cancer, solving world hunger, intergalactic diplomacy?" Elena laughed, linking her arm through his. "How about we start with dinner? I hear there's a new place that's actually managed to get electricity back." As they walked towards the slowly rebuilding city, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The quantum gambit had paid off. But the real victory wasn't in the technology or the tactics. It was in the indomitable spirit of humanity, the refusal to give up even when all seemed lost. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but looking at the determination on the faces of those working to rebuild, Elena knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The Valaxian invasion had nearly been the end of humanity. Instead, it had become a new beginning. And as the sun set on a free Earth, the future stretched out before them, filled with possibilities as infinite as the stars themselves.